We are reading from Brotherhood of Darkness by Dr. Stanley Monteith. This is Chapter 2, Too Many Clues. The Trilateral Commission is intended to be the vehicle for multinational consolidation of the commercial and banking interests by seizing control of the political government of the United States. Senator Barry Goldwater. The plot of Agatha Christie's novel Murder on the Orient Express will help you understand the story of the Brotherhood of Darkness. The murder took place on the elegant passenger train that traveled between Istanbul and Paris, linking the mystery of the East with the rationalism of the West. Agatha Christie's book was eventually made into a motion picture with Lauren Bacall, Ingrid Bergman, Jacqueline Bisset, Martin Balsam, Sean Connery, Anthony Perkins, Vanessa Redgrave, Richard Widmark, and Albert Finney, who played the part of Inspector Poirot. Shortly after the movie began, a group of passengers boarded the Orient Express in Istanbul. Among them was Inspector Hercule Poirot, a world-famous Belgian detective, and Mr. Ratchet, a wealthy man traveling with his secretary and butler. Shortly after the train departed, Mr. Ratchet approached Inspector Poirot and told him that someone had threatened to kill him. He offered the inspector $15,000 to protect him until they reached Paris, but Inspector Poirot refused. The train entered a tunnel. The movie screen went black, and when the lights came back on, Mr. Ratchet had disappeared. The next morning he was found stabbed to death in his compartment. A railroad official asked Inspector Poirot to solve the crime, so he went to Mr. Ratchet's compartment and began searching for clues. Everywhere he looked, he found conflicting evidence, and he suddenly realized that the murder scene had been staged to confuse him. At that point, he paused, surveyed the crime scene, and commented, "There are too many clues." In many respects, that is what's happening today. We are threatened by terrorism, biological warfare, environmental catastrophe, global warming, acid rain, water shortages, nuclear attack, aliens from outer space, genetically altered foods, Y2K, new diseases, an imploding social system, rising crime, moral decay, a failing educational system, and dozens of other real or imagined dangers. When we try to determine who or what is responsible for our problems, we are overwhelmed with facts and become confused. Psychologists call our condition cognitive dissonance. Pavlov produced a similar state in dogs. He found that if he conditioned them to salivate in response to the sound of a buzzer, then conditioned them to salivate in response to the sound of a bell, and then conditioned them to salivate in response to a third sound, when all three sounds were transmitted together, the animals became confused and withdrew from reality. Pavlov's dogs lived in a laboratory where they were monitored. We live in a society where almost everything we see, hear, and read is monitored by those who control the media. Before we can confront our problems effectively, we must understand that someone or some group is manipulating our reality. We must free ourselves from their control and discover the truth. Who is responsible for what is happening in the world today? The bankers. I am afraid the ordinary citizen will not like to be told that the bankers can and do create money, and they who control the credit of the nation direct the policy of governments and hold in the hollow of their hands the destiny of the people. Many people believe that the bankers are responsible for our problems because they have the ability to create money and either lend it at exorbitant rates or use it to purchase industries, media outlets, property, or politicians. President Thomas Jefferson warned us about the danger of modern banking practices almost 200 years ago when he wrote, "Everything predicted by the enemies of banks in the beginning is now coming to pass. We are to be ruined now by a deluge of bank paper as we were formerly by the old continental paper. It is cruel that such revolutions in private fortunes should be at the mercy of avaricious adventurers, who instead of employing their capital, if any they have, in manufactures, commerce, and other useful purposes or pursuits, make it an instrument to burden all the interchanges of property with their swindling profits which are the price of no useful industry of theirs. Prudent men must be on their guard in this game of robins alive, and take care that the spark does not extinguish in their hands. I am an enemy to all banks discounting bills or notes for anything but coin. But our whole country is so fascinated by this jack-o'-lantern wealth that they will not stop short of its total and fatal explosion. When President Clinton accepted the presidential nomination for the Democratic Party on July 16, 1992, he said, "As a teenager, I heard John Kennedy's summons to citizenship, and then as a student at Georgetown, I heard that call clarified by a professor named Carroll Quigley." And we will stop this video right here and pick up in the next. This was Part 1 of Chapter 2 in the Brotherhood of Darkness.